Hello, it's Bruce here again. Wanted to give you an update, a third installment, if you will, on the building of this coal tipple, which we have somewhat been referring to as making a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And first of all, I think you can see that the walls are together, and that's a good thing. I'm busy now working on the flooring and the under supports. Everything is glued except for the upper front wall that has the Lycoming coal sign on it. So before that falls, I'm going to remove this because I want to turn the model around a bit. The floor is not glued in yet, but you can see that there's a couple of braces that are not centered, and the reason for that is that underneath there is going to be a support that's glued to the floor that runs right down the middle this way, and so that'll be plenty of support there for the floor. The hole that you see is lines up with one of the chutes on the bottom. I'll talk more about those chutes in a minute, but I'll position the speaker for the sound right over that, so the sound will come out downward through the chute and under the structure. Let me take the floor out for a minute and talk about it. I just need to be careful that I don't break the chutes, so that's why it was sitting up on these metal angle blocks here. But now that that's out of the way, I can get rid of those. The chutes, as you can see, are sloped. They start out 6 feet across at the top and then slope inward. That's not what the plans called for. The plans, and if you look at this plan, this is one of the chutes sticking out the bottom. This is the structure above it here. This is the structure. And this is a platform with railing that's yet to be built. But this was one of the chutes. And you can see they were just square, coming straight down, made out of the same kind of siding as the structure. But we are all about upgrading this kit. And one of the ways to do that is to do a little bit fancier chute here. Now this floor, which is simply colored with a marker, after all, it's going to be like this, and nobody's going to really be able to look up there unless I do some fancy photography. This is made out of cardboard, and I build a lot with cardboard. I've made entire structures out of it. This cardboard in particular is from the backing off of a writing pad. So over the years I've saved a lot of them, different thicknesses. Some of them are very good to work with, some of them aren't. But I have a stack about 2 inches thick of these things from the years when I was working. So it's good stuff to work with. So that's the flooring. They were going to use their cardstock, which is a bit thicker, but I prefer using this. The chutes themselves are also made out of light cardboard, and this time they were made out of actually a graham cracker box, another cardboard that's good to work with, and I made the chutes out of that. I glued them together and painted them black. I'll put some rust on them, and that'll be the chutes. I want to show you I like to show a couple how-tos in every video, and this time I want to show how I went about building those chutes. So let's start. I will rearrange the camera a little bit so you can see what we're working on here. On the bottom I drew just a line, a straight line with a ruler. And then I laid off at 6 scale feet intervals, 5 points, if you will. And if you go back to your high school geometry, if you're, I guess if you took geometry anywhere up through the 1970s, you probably still were taught how to do some basic constructions. And one of which is how to construct an isosceles triangle. So you lay off the base, which is going to be 6 feet. You take a compass, and I open that up to 7 scale feet. And you start by putting the point at one end of that first 6 foot and scribe an arc. And you come over to the other side of that 6 feet and you scribe another arc. And where those two arcs meet is the upper vertex of an isosceles triangle. And again, an isosceles triangle is one that has 2 equal sides. So there and here. And I then went down and I actually made 5 of those. And the reason I make 5 is I always want a spare in case when I do my cutting something doesn't come out right. So, you know what? Maybe let me just quickly do the rest of them. And that way we have a complete set. So coming back here, scribe an arc. To the other side, scribe an arc. And so forth. And I want to thank my high school geometry teacher, Mr. Beers, who taught it in such a way that I'm remembering it some 60 plus years later. He was the high school football coach and had a booming voice. Somehow I think he always thought he was out on the football field. But what he taught stuck with me. Of course, at the time I was one of those many people who said, why do we have to know this anyway? But over the years, a number of these basic geometry constructions have proven very, very useful in my modeling. All right. Just show you very quickly how we end up with the sides of those chutes. The nice thing about using cereal box weight cardboard is that it's easy to cut with a plain scissors. You don't need to be using your hobby knife to do it. And I'll do the extra one too. Oops, nope, that's right. Now what I did was I want to make a trapezoid. So to make a trapezoid you're going to draw a horizontal line here, and what's left is the cut off bottom of the isosceles triangle will give you, in this case, 5 trapezoids that are exactly the same size and shape. And what I did was I measured 3 scale feet up, and I just did this by eye as to what would probably look good on the chute. And I'm going to draw a horizontal line across those marks. And then taking a pair of scissors, just cut that out along the bottom line. Top line. And start cutting along the slant sides. And there, I'll put it against something white, is one of the sides of the chute. And I did that, I'll just do one more and I'll show you how easy it is to glue these together. They become quite stable when you get all four sides glued together. Okay, there's two of them, and that'll be enough to show you how I glued them. Just make sure that that's still in the picture. Of course it wasn't. Wonder how long you weren't seeing what I was doing here. There we go. So I am going to take a little bit of my glue, get my toothpick, pick a little bit up, and put it all along one edge. And tilting them forward so that they are together at the bottom and at the top. There's two sides of the chute glued together. Just let that set for a minute, and then you would come over and do a second side, and then finally I should say the third side, and then the fourth side. Now I just glued these, one of them actually, with the shiny side out, which is not what you want, but you want the plain side out on all four of them. But that just shows you how quick something like that will go together. And that's another reason I like Aleene's, is that it's tacky. It'll hold things in place while they dry, and you can just keep on with your build. Okay, so there's the chutes, and working with cardstock, it's a great modeling medium. You don't need something fancy to make your model look good. Okay, the other part of the update is that I've started working on the understructure. You are to build 3 of these. They go longitudinally. In other words, this is going to sit up on these this way, and there'll be one on each edge and one going down the middle. This, again, being a basic kit, and for them to try to hold down the price, what they said was that you would only install these cross pieces, and they only provided the wood for the cross pieces for the front row of supports. So only for the row that is along the front wall did they have with the cross beam supports. Now, first of all, of course, whether it's in the real world or the model world, if you created just the structure with the bottom and these verticals, that's not going to be stable. You brush it with your hand, they're going to collapse and so forth. So I had the same size wood in my stash, and I stained a bunch of it, and I'm about ready to build wall 2 and 3. Here's the first wall. Done. So that's going to sit again under the front wall, somewhat like this. Okay. Now there's some beams that are going to be put on top of this structure. There's a set of beams that run this way, and then there's a couple that go on top of those. This was supposed to sit on the ground, but to me that looks way too light to sit on the ground. So I've stained up some larger beams. Go out a little bit. And I'm going to, at the end, glue these to those larger beams. I haven't decided how much to let them extend yet, so I made them a little extra long. This will do a couple things. Make it look more substantial down there at the base, but besides that, it gives me more clearance for the locomotives and the train cars to go underneath the structure. So I need to build 2 more of these and then kind of connect them all into the substructure for underneath. show you the picture of what they had. Let me zoom in on that. It's the picture on the bottom left, down here. And if you look, you will see that only the front wall has the cross beams in them, the cross supports. And I just found that obviously not prototypical, but also just silly for the few pennies for a couple more pieces of wood. So I'm building those, and I just want to again quickly show you how in this update you build those right on top of the drawing. So I started by making photocopies, 3 altogether because I need 3 of these walls, and as you saw, one of them is already done. So it's I'm on to numbers 2 and 3. And the way you do it is you put a tiny piece of our Scotch double-sided tape at the very top of a beam, one of the vertical beams. We're going to put these 4 beams down as I did over here, and a small piece at the bottom. And you then take one of your beams and get it set right on the bottom, and you need to leave room for this base that they're going to put in. And then before I push it down, I take my square, and again I'm working on a raised piece of MDF here, and just make sure that it is indeed plumb, nice and vertical. Push it down, and now that's stable enough to do your work. You don't want to have too much of the double-sided tape, or it becomes much harder to get the structure back off of the paper. Once those vertical ones are there and they're only being held by the tape, the first thing you would do, and let me now go over to the one I already have set up, and I'll just show you on that one. Okay, so again, just a tiny bit of glue on a toothpick. And put it just a dab on the bottom of each of these legs. Let me get some fresh glue. That was already setting up. This bottom board is going to give a lot of strength to this support until we get everything else built on it. So I want to make sure that you got a good bond. On each of those. Okay. Now I have labeled on my diagram the size of each piece of wood. This is a 1/16 by an 1/8, and I always double check again with the scale that I showed you once before. So that is indeed a 1/16 by an 1/8. You don't want to have something glued and find out you have the wrong dimension on it. And you just put it into that glue. And it's a little bit, just a tiny bit longer. It extends both ways, kind of spread it even. Wipe the glue off the top. If you see any glue oozing out down in the corners, you get them out now before it dries. Just get yourself a toothpick and go picking in here, because you don't want to have big gobs of glue showing on your model. And I will tell you that after I only put the first one down over here, but when you had all 4 of these down, I made sure that they were level at the bottom, and so that when I put a straight edge on it was making contact with all 4, because you don't want to have any kind of wobble or anything else. And there you go. Now what I am going to do, just to get those to glue up good, is to put some weights on it, holding it in there, and leave it there. Once that's dry, I start putting the cross bracing in, and on those, let me just put this one over here a minute, rearrange the camera. To do the cross braces, you lay it on top of the drawing and take your razor blade and you make the cuts right on top of the model. So you get it to length, you get the angle right, do that for all three, and then glue all three of them. Once it's dry, you pry it up, turn it over, and put the cross braces on the other side. And you got something that's pretty stable already, and it'll be a lot more stable when you start getting connected with the other three. So that's it. What's next is finish the wiring inside the building to allow for the sound and for some lights. I'm going to have lights not in the building but shining down underneath the structure where the cars would be getting filled. And because I might want to take that soundboard out of the building at some point to reprogram it, or if something went wrong with it, I wanted to have the wiring done so that it was able to be disconnected. So I got these disconnects and I'll splice them into the middle of the wiring inside the building so that if I need to remove the board, I don't have to cut the wires, I can just disconnect it and pull it out. So I'm ready to move on with that. It should come together quickly, and probably in the next update the underframe will be attached and we'll be up to working on the roof. Okay, that's it for now.